Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity extended to me to share my perspectives and insights on this very important topic. It is an honor and a privilege to deliver my keynote address via video message from the United Nations headquarters in New York. Permit me to introduce myself briefly. My name is Rosa Malango, and I'm the Director of the Regional Commission's New York office in New York. I am also an alumni of the University of Lagos, UNILAG, and ACOCITE. My nearly 3 decades of experience with the UN include assignments as UN Resident Coordinator and Designated Official for Security in the Republic of Uganda, as well as assignments in Guatemala, Cote d'Ivoire, Mozambique, Ethiopia, Geneva, among others. I have also been responsible for operations and partnerships around the world based out of our New York office. As part of the UN Secretariat, the office I'm heading now in New York serves as a coordination hub for the 5 UN regional commissions around the world. The regional commissions serve as think tanks for the UN system, undertaking research, generating policy recommendations to tackle development challenges in each region. The commissions also serve as conveners of intergovernmental and other multi-stakeholder platforms. And as subsidiaries of the UN Economic and Social Council, the commissions support the priorities of both ECOSOC and the UN General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is currently beset by multiple crises, from the COVID-19 pandemic to the climate, food, and energy crisis, to the continuing wars around the world, including in Ukraine. The escalating climate emergency, the crushing debt burdens, are triggering a cost of life crisis that are compounded by the unequal recovery from the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and are affecting lives and livelihoods around the world. These cascading crises are exacerbating poverty and hunger in many vulnerable countries. They are also reversing years of gains made on sustainable development, particularly among the most vulnerable. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by the member states in 2015, is a global plan of action which places people and planet at the epicenter of development. The agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals embody the aspirations and commitments of 193 member states of the United Nations to eradicate poverty, reduce inequalities and vulnerabilities that undermine the potential of individuals and humanity. For us, leaving no one behind is a central transformative promise of the SDGs. And as I address you today, the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals is in jeopardy. And as the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said at the recent G20 Leaders Summit in Bali, the SDGs are issuing an SOS. So, coming back to today's conference, the theme of the conference, a holistic inclusion in the extractive industries, focuses on a key sector of the economy which is at the intersection of job creation, economic growth, environmental protection, and human rights. It takes an important and timely look at the need for a holistic and inclusive approach to the sector. The extractive industries has immense potential to drive growth, support sustainable development, and reduce poverty. Yet, the actual contribution of the sector to sustainable development in countries which are rich in raw materials has often been mired by financial, economic, governance, social, and environmental concerns. Women and men are impacted differently by the extractive industries projects. Women often bear a disproportionate burden of adverse effects associated with the extractive projects and are less likely to share in the benefits. Women are often marginalized in the stakeholder engagement, their caretaking responsibilities, and the risk of sexual and gender-based violence are never properly considered. The extractive industry companies frequently undertake a gender-neutral approach to human rights during due diligence. These perpetuate existing inequities and they contribute to subjugating women to a perpetual cycle of poverty, transforming what should have been an opportunity into a nightmare. The environmental challenges associated with these industries also pose risk for current and future generations. Greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, and biodiversity loss are some of the threats the extractive industries pose to human health and the environment if not approached with care. We must make sure that the economic benefits from the sector do not come at the expense of the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, the many competing interests in the extractive sector suggest that the importance of a shared vision to create the policy space which secures the interests of all stakeholders at all levels is crucial. In Africa, for too long, it has been taken for granted that there are always losers and winners in the mineral extraction process. The broader interest of some stakeholders, notably the communities, has been far from secure. And particularly when we look at mitigating the risk around gender-based violence, involuntary resettlement, loss of access to land, pollution, and other inequalities, including access to health and safety. These issues have been particularly affected women and frontline communities the most. In recognition of these issues, I'm delighted to note that the African Union Heads of State and Government, about a decade ago, in 2009, adopted a continental policy framework known as the Africa Mining Vision. This vision was adopted with the goal of creating a transparent, equitable, and optimal exploitation of mineral resources to underpin broad-based sustainable growth and socioeconomic development. This African vision seeks to address the sector's isolation from mainstream social and economic activities and to create win-win outcomes for all stakeholders. It also puts at the center of the role the development of developmental states, the integration of the mining sector into broader social and economic development processes. Based on a recent gap analysis study, Nigeria has ratified and deposited a total of 9 of the treaties and instruments directly related to this vision with the African Union. The domestication into the country mining vision, we understand, is currently underway. Furthermore, in August this year, the government of Nigeria launched its Energy Transition Plan with the aim to achieve SDG 7 by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2060. Nigeria's commitment to a just and equitable climate action is commendable. At the core of the plan is the promotion of a fair, inclusive, and equitable energy transition on the continent, lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. These are encouraging signs of progress, but we need more concerted efforts to turn these aspirations into reality. Ladies and gentlemen, a year into the COVID-19 pandemic in 2021, the regional commissions convened 5 regional roundtables on extractive industries to identify recommendations for transforming the sector into an engine for sustainable development that can support a just transition to a net zero, circular, and inclusive global economy. I want to share with you some of the findings from the roundtables relevant to the conference being held today. First, while the extractive industries do generate jobs, they have direct and indirect negative social implications, including displacement of populations, economic, social, and gender inequality, and even armed conflict. They are also prone to putting people working in the sector at risk of illness, injury, or death due to weak safety regulations and insufficient personal protective equipment. Second, women are more exposed to environmental and economic hazards. With fewer economic opportunities at hand, women are also disproportionately affected by the negative implications of the sector, including involuntary resettlement, loss of access to land and finance, loss of access to clean water, air and soil pollution, and mercury contamination, among others. Many women suffer from increased gender-based violence, including even prostitution and sexual slavery related to the industry. But third, the green transition identified at the roundtables do present enormous opportunities. Developing countries who are rich in these resources have what it takes to be able to start a renewable revolution, and they have the potential to create new jobs that can address the issues around equity and social justice. Social inclusion and dialogue, especially with civil society and vulnerable communities, including women, indigenous groups, youth, and all those displaced by the green transition, must be considered carefully if we are to secure a just transition. Before I conclude, I would like to call for increased investments in the environmental, social, and corporate governance in this industry, as well as call for enhancing the retained value from the extractive sector so that it may contribute to more sustainable and inclusive development starting at the community level. We must leverage the opportunities offered by local knowledge and indigenous technologies to make the extractive sector safer and more inclusive, as well as to mitigate the negative potential environmental impacts. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude my intervention, I want to leave you with two key messages from the Secretary General's call to action, issued in May 2021 as part of the launch of his policy brief on the extractive industries. First, we need to harmonize national standards and further enforce clear regulatory frameworks to ensure oversight of companies engaged in the sector as part of implementing the principles of environmental sustainability, transparency, accountability, and human rights. Second, governments should systematically include civil society and vulnerable groups, including women, in the design, implementation, and monitoring of all extractive operations to ensure sustainability and enhance accountability. These calls have become more pressing in the current global context, and I invite you to reflect on them as you deliberate on the ESG practices in the extractive industry's value chain. It is my sincere hope that the participants of this conference will build on the work of the regional commissions around the world, particularly in carrying forward the actionable policy recommendations on making this sector safer, more inclusive, and transformative for all. I thank you for your attention.